Chief Minister Conrad Sangma addressed the media on Wednesday to clarify financial concerns raised in the latest Comptroller and Auditor General report. The Chief Minister, who was also joined by Dr. Vijay Kumar D, Commissioner and Secretary of the Finance Department, gave a detailed presentation addressing all the concerns mentioned in the recent CAG report.
Friends, in the last few days, we have seen multiple concerns being raised regarding some of the financial numbers that have come out in the CAG report. Consequently, the Finance Department has submitted clarification on those numbers to clarify on the different aspects and the different concerns that were raised. At the very outset, I would like to just mention to all of you that this entire concern between whether CAG numbers are correct or the state government numbers are correct, I just want to clarify that both are actually in the right direction. Both are actually correct. The question is how and where you place the numbers, which date you take the numbers from, and in which section or under which head do you put certain expenditures. And based on that, the numbers actually come out differently. So that's the reason why CAG has come out with certain reports based on putting certain expenditures under certain heads, which has then inflated numbers in certain way. But if you actually were to remove those numbers from that particular head, which should have been the case, then you will find that what the Finance Ministry is saying and Department is saying is correct. So to give you a more detailed picture on what we are trying to say and what we're trying to share with all of you, we will try to give you a detailed presentation in a simplified manner so that it doesn't confuse you any further. And whenever you have questions, you can always ask the questions. But we're going to lay down all the numbers for you in the most transparent manner to share with you and inform you about the facts and the figures that are there. And based on that, you can obviously make your own judgment on what are the actual facts and where the state stands in terms of finances.
So AG has raised three concerns. One is that the GSDP growth rate is not so good, it's only 10%. So this is the AG report of 22-23. So AG said state's GSDP, which is the state's gross state domestic product, has grown only by 10%, which is less. AG has also said that the fiscal deficit of the state in the year 22-23 as a percentage of the GDP is 6.55, which is high. AG has also said that the debt of the state, overall debt to the GSDP is 43%, which is also high. So these are the three things that the AG has said. So one by one, which we already issued a press release, but I think we want to clarify in much greater detail. So as Honorable CM just mentioned, it is about the timing of the numbers. See, the fundamental first number is the GSDP number, which is the gross state domestic product. So this number is computed over a 4-year period. So for this year, for example, for 24-25, we only have the first estimates. So then we have what is called a Department of Economics and Statistics under the Planning Department, which and the nodal department in Government of India to finalize the GSDP is the MOFSP, that is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Basically, the receipts minus expenditure, very simple terms. So how much we have money from our tax collections, from the Government of India also collects taxes on behalf of all the states and gives the share to the states. So we get share of central taxes, we have our own taxes and other revenues. So these all are receipts minus our expenditure. That is fiscal deficit. So the overall story across the world is that every country, every state, every city, everybody who has finances is expected to spend a little bit more than what you have, especially because when you spend more, the growth happens. So, and that is how the whole world economy works. So, but there is a limit. If you go beyond limit, that's the problem. So Government of India has for the long time through what is called the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, all the states have said that there is a limit. 3% was the limit, but in the last 5 years, because of COVID, Government of India is saying, please borrow more and spend more and invest in capital. So they have increased this limit to about 4%. So 4% is the limit of borrowing. That much we have to borrow. We cannot borrow more than that. I think the question of government borrowing more does not arise because this is controlled by Government of India. Now the question is, if we cannot go beyond 4%, how is our fiscal deficit 6.5%? So this is what AG is also asking, and this is, I think, the main issue which we want to clarify. So what has happened, a very interesting thing that has happened after COVID is, again, Government of India came up with a scheme called SASCI. It's called the Special Capital Assistance to States for Capital Investment. So Government of India said, India has to grow. We have this Viksit Bharat dream. India has to become a developed country. So states have to invest more in capital projects. They have to take up new projects, new roads, new schools, new highways, new buildings, all kinds of new capital projects. So Government of India said, we will give you money to the states. The Government of India will borrow and give to the states as a 50-year interest-free loan. So it's a 50-year interest-free loan will be given to the states. So take this money, invest in capital projects. So, and the special capital assistance scheme comes as one is a normative allotment, which is we get a quota of that money. So in this, as sir said, there is some money that is given to every state as a matter of right. There is some which is performance based. So you submit good DPRs, you submit good projects, you submit the UCs on time. So if you can see, we are one of the better performing states, especially last year. Our normative was 765, not 767. We got 825 crores extra on the performance based on urban reforms, for the construction of Unity Mall, for the construction of digital libraries in 700 villages, for doing police housing. All these are schemes based on DPR and on a first come first serve basis. This year, that is 24-25, we are targeting 2,085 crores under this scheme. Again, our normative is only about 765. So what we are saying is that because we are getting more money under this, so our year is 22-23. 22-23, we got 1,000 crores under this scheme, 1,049. 1,000 crores as a percentage of 400 crores, 40,000 crores, which is our GSDP, is 2.5%. So our permissible GSDP is 4%. Another 2.5% is coming from here. So therefore, our GSDP in the accounting becomes 6.5%, our fiscal deficit. But effectively, our fiscal deficit is less than 4. This is a loan by definition. But in reality, this is not a loan; it is a grant. So that is the biggest reason why our fiscal deficit. That's the only reason actually why our fiscal deficit is showing as 6.5 instead of less than 4. Next slide, please.
And this also, just to give an example.
How much this for 50 years this interest-free loan? How much is given?
No, that's what, go back. So this interest-free loan for 50 years, the normative allotment in the first column, that is the amount given to Meghalaya. We were given 200 normative, we used 200 in the first year. Second year we were given 200, but we performed very well, so we got extra 100, we got total 300. Third year, our normative allotment was 614, we did very good, and we got additional 435 crores, total went to 1,049 crores. Last year, we were given 765 crores. We did well. We got extra 825 and total of 1,293. So we are one of the highest beneficiaries actually of this particular scheme. And as mentioned by Commissioner Secretary, we don't have to pay the interest for this. So, this is going to be the principal amount. After 50 years, we'll have to repay back. And we will show you again that there is a mechanism for this to also hedge for this in one way, where we have got a fund that in a sinking consolidated fund, money is kept, and that hedging is done for that also in that particular aspect, which we will show you later on. So this is technically, in a way, a grant, but for accounting purpose, since it is a long-term loan being taken by Government of India, the CAG had to put it under some head.
CAG has been instructed by Government of India.
Yeah, to put it under this head. So all states have gone through this. All the states have everything. Even Assam, they got about 2,000 crores under this. We got 1,000 crores last year, 1,200 crores last year. They took about 2,000 plus crores. But their GSDP is 1,50,000 crores. So therefore, 2,000 for a GSDP of 1,50,000 crores, the percentage is much lesser. So the impact of that accounting on a large state is much lesser compared to a small state where 1,200 on a 40,000 or a 1,000 crore on a 40,000 is about 2.5%. So that's where these numbers are showing. So AG is not wrong in what they're doing. It's just that this number should not technically be under our debt, our fiscal deficit numbers, but then AG was instructed to do it. And just to share with you, this issue has been raised with Government of India, and Government of India, in fact, yesterday, Commissioner Secretary had a meeting at Finance Department, and this issue has been raised. Finance Ministry has taken cognizance of this, and they have asked us to write a letter, which they're then going to take up with the AG to ensure that in the future, this number should not come under our fiscal deficit or even the debt category.
But this amount, even after 50 years, we have to return.
Principal amount,
Only the principal.
not the interest.
But we'll show you. Can
And
you go to
we'll
the
show
next
you.
slide, please?
So this is what
So
it
there
is.
is something called a consolidated sinking fund. So this is again, these are all financial. So India, we have very strong financial, mechanisms. So what the consolidated sinking fund is, every state government, RBI mandates that every state government should deposit 0.05% of the outstanding liabilities into what is called as a consolidated sinking fund. So every year we put this money. So we have almost 705 crores in our consolidated sinking fund. So which means, let's say if we default tomorrow, this money will be used to pay. And now if you look at the special capital, since last year, 22-23, we borrowed 1,000 crores. Borrowed means, as I said, it's a grand one. But we have put 5 crores in that fund. This 5 crores in 50 years, just by the power of compounding, becomes 300 crores. Next year again, we are putting 5 crores. That becomes another 300 crores. So like this, to repay the 1,000 crores in 50 years, we will have 5,000 crores. So just by the simple power of compounding.
Because as I said, we'll be putting this money. We will get interest for putting this money in the bank account. But we don't have to pay interest for using this money because Government of India is paying the interest. And the principal amount also of what we take, that means the 1,000 crores we take today, 50 years later we have to pay 1,000 crores only. We don't have to pay, the multiplied number. So the 1,000 crores 50 years later is going to be valued much lesser. And therefore the consolidated sinking fund amount that we're putting of 5 crores is going to be a hedging, as I said, and going to allow us to repay that amount that is required for the amount we've taken. So as I said, 1,000 crores we are borrowing today. We have to pay back 1,000 crores 50 years later, not the compounded interest value of that. The principal amount of 1,000 crores after 50 years. So therefore, that is the beauty of this particular project, and therefore, this cannot be seen as a pure debt, because debt means we have to pay interest, principal amount within a certain time period of about 7 years, 8 years, or 10 years, whatever the RBI mandates for us. So it's a completely different category. But the CAG has put this particular fund under our debt aspect and fiscal deficit, which actually, from a realistic point of view, actually would not be correct because of what the explanation we've given to you right now. And this should have been, the numbers that this should be showing is two numbers, which is the fiscal deficit with the special assistant.
Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, next slide. So they should show numbers which is on the second table. If you can see the second table, the fiscal deficit as per AG right now is 6.55. If you look at 2022-23. But if you were to look at the revised GSDP as per the revised GSDP of the MOSPI, which was the first slide we showed you, where we have shown that we are at 46,000 and not 42,000. Already our fiscal deficit is down to 6.01, because the higher the GDP, the lesser the percentage, because it's debt over GSDP, right? So third column, if you see that we have, third row, sorry, if you look at it, which says the fiscal deficit after correction of 2, which means after removing the special emphasis on capital investment. If you remove that from the calculation, our fiscal deficit is 3.75.
Sir,
One
is there
question.
any possibility, because as you mentioned, like it's a kind of grave mistake that the AG had done?
No, it's not a grave mistake. It is a direction.
Let me complete.
Yeah.
Can AG also issue clarification?
No, they can't. Because this is like this. The point is, AG has been directed to do this process. And this has been done for all states, as we mentioned. Now, Finance Department will have to direct AG that from future, next year onwards, you should come out with a chart like this, where you say fiscal deficit with the capital investment, special assistance on capital investment is 6.0, but without it, which is the actual fiscal deficit, is 3.75. So this kind of numbers, so that people are clear that these are two different categories and they should be dealt separately. And those who would like to see the number with the special assistant, then you can see the second column, and those who would like to see it without it would see the third column. As I said, because from all angles, this long-term loan that is there, which is an interest-free loan, which is to be repaid after 50 years, is almost equivalent to a grant. And there is a mechanism for the state government to put funds in the consolidated fund, consolidated sinking fund, which then will grow because we are getting interest on that money, and that will be sufficient for us to be able to repay this amount, principal amount, which we're borrowing today, which we have to pay back after 50 years. So we're already making provisions for that.
But sir, the CAG had pointed out that the state has failed to achieve that total outstanding liabilities to GSDP ratio target of 28% set by the Meghalaya fiscal.
Okay, that's the next
That's the next slide.
Yeah, so we'll come to the next one.
Budget for the period from
Yeah, we'll explain that.
2018 to
Yeah,
2020.
so that's the debt.
That's the
one.
last.
Yeah.
Just go back once. So, sir, as to I think confirm this. So basically, our fiscal deficit of 22-23 is 3.75. The limit is 4. So we're well within the limits. Special capital assistance is a complete grant, and I think we are doing very well to utilize that money. It's free money, which is there to do really interesting projects in the state. So, and as sir said, we are going to, what we are explaining to you, we are going to send a proper letter, a formal letter to the AG, explaining that this is what it is, and this will be a problem. This won't be a problem for big states. This is a problem for small states because we are getting huge amount of free money, and our GDP is small. For example, if Maharashtra gets, as sir said, if Assam gets big money, so it's not that their fiscal deficit will affect. So therefore, I think the number that we all have to look at is 3.75. So now the debt story. Next. So AG has also made this comment saying that the debt is basically 43%. Again, here also it's the same story what we said in the press release. So if we exclude the capital, special capital assistance money from that, our number is 36 and not 43. That's exactly what we said in the press release. So yes, we are not at 28%, it's a fact. So we were even 10 years ago, we were at 30%. So we are today at 36%. But if you look at our projections for the next 5 years, on all the three scenarios, the most optimistic, the normal, and the most probable scenario, we will be by the year 28 in within the 28%. We will hit 27.13 in the most pessimistic scenario also. We are taking various steps because it doesn't change in one day, because during COVID time, what has happened is that all state governments were encouraged to borrow more. Government of India allowed us to borrow up to 6%. This is the highest. I think in 21-22, up to 6% was permitted by Government of India. So therefore, the state's debt has increased, and also GDP came down. So debt as a percentage of GDP, therefore, is higher. But today our number is 36, and the plan is there. In any growth scenario, we should hit the 28% by 27-28.
So just to again to sum up this aspect, this is what we call the debt to GSDP ratio. That means the debt amount divided by the GSDP. Why this went up to 36%, as mentioned by Dr. Vijay, that it's not 45%, because the 45% is including the special assistant on capital investment. If we were to minus that and not include it in the debt, then we are down to 36%, because as I said, that is not actually in debt. That's number one question. So 36% now. Now why 36% and how it happened? Even before, 10 years back also as mentioned, we were at 30%. So a number has been always above 28% at large. During the COVID time, the debt ceiling was allowed to be increased by the central government, and obviously we took that because we needed the money, and that increased our debt. But at the same time, our expenditure, our GSDP went down. So when the denominator is going down and the numerator is going up, so obviously the percentage obviously goes up. So we saw the entire process of this debt to GSDP ratio hit very badly during the COVID time. But having said that, as we expect our GSDP to go up, and we've shown the scenarios to you that even at a 10% growth, which is a very, very pessimistic number and very conservative number, we are still looking at an 80,000 crore economy that we are moving towards. So our GSDP is poised to go up in the next 4 years, 3 to 4 years time. As GSDP goes up and as we control our debt, which is obviously, as I said, Government of India is very, very particular. It is Government of India that gives us the permission to borrow. It is the Reserve Bank that ultimately borrows and gives us the money. So there is no way, even if we want to take, we can't take unless RBI and things. So all these caps are put in, and we expect that the trend, as you said in this, as you can see in this chart, the three scenarios, that numbers out there are actually percent. So that's 27.13%, 25.94%. And in a best case scenario, where we expect to touch almost about 96,000 crores in terms of our economy, we're looking at a 24% 0.41% in terms of our debt to GSDP ratio. So this is the scenario for and the explanation for what the AG has said regarding debt.
So this potential debt trap that the CAG has warned does not arise?
No, see, the CAG is giving its opinion. They have the right to give their opinion. But yes, to answer your question, has absolutely no issue with that, and absolutely we are in no question of getting into a debt trap. As I said, the way Finance Ministry, Government of India works today, they are monitoring every single rupee that the government borrows, and they only permit up to the level which is permissible as per the rules and norms laid down by Finance Ministry. So even if we want to borrow, we can't borrow. So therefore the question of us going and crossing the limit does not arise, because ultimately it is the RBI that is going to fund. So if we are going to fall into debt trap, next year Government of India and RBI will not allow us to borrow anymore. So it's as simple as that.
So what step is the government taking to improve the budgetary performance? Because we have seen the CAG has indicated that there is poor budgetary performance of the state.
Let me be more specific on that. It's a very broad statement you're making. So what specific aspect?
So after coming up with all these figures, they have come up with this conclusion.
No.
We are going beyond the figures.
Let me just answer that question.
So budgetary performance, this again we explain every year to you. So on the debt trap, a final thing is, I think AG has made the comment of a debt trap looking at the 43% number. But now that we know it is not 43, it is 36. So there is a huge 8% difference. So obviously the question of debt trap does not arise, and we are on the path to consolidation. Now on the budgetary numbers, so this is another thing that happens in every exit conference we do. So what AG expects, and it's good practice, is that the budget should be tight. That means if we announce a budget of 25,000 crores, we should make an expenditure of 25,000 crores. So there is always some kind of what we call surrender at the end of the year. So even in the last year, when our budget expenditure was 21,800 crores, our budget was 27,000 crores. So there's a 5,000 gap. So AG says, why budgeting? This we explain every year, which is that we are dependent on the CSS. So when we make the budget, we expect that under SSA we will get 600 crores, 800 crores. We only end up getting maybe 400 crores. So therefore in CSS, typically we over budget. So, and this is a problem again of smaller states which are dependent on Government of India. Larger states, they don't depend so much on Government of India schemes. So their budgeting is a little more tighter. But in our states, we sometimes budget more optimistically for the CSS, because suddenly last year, for example, PMAY, we got 1,700 crores. But we only made a budget provision of 1,000. Then we had to again, wait for assembly to make the budget provision, because if you don't have budget provision, even when you have the money, you can't draw the money. So that is the reason.
That's why SD is done.
That is the reason why there is a little bit of over budgeting. This is more of a procedural issue. Of course, in state schemes also, sometimes departments are more optimistic that they can spend more money. So we are constantly, in fact, sir, many years ago, the gap between the budget and the expenditure was much higher. Now we are slowly closing the gap. But yes, so this is the reality. There is a real problem, because Government of India announces its budget on the 1st of February. So we make our budget based on Government of India's numbers. But Government of India says in SSA we will give 10,000 crores. But they don't say how much they give for Meghalaya. That comes only after 3-4 months when ministries have their meetings and all. So therefore everybody is guessing. So therefore there is bound to be some bit of slack in the overall budget making.
The question is to the CM. We are talking about bigger cash in hand, as outside. There are parameters like health, education. We are very poor in these sectors, and we are borrowing power from outside. So what do you
Borrowing
mean?
what?
Power. Now, what do you
Borrowing
mean?
power. We don't borrow.
What do you mean by you are spending a lot of money on power? But what do you mean by growth? What is this growth? Can you tell us?
Growth is basically the GSDP growing. So when you look at the GSDP, it involves everything from government investment, government spending, to private investment that takes place, to the overall consumption that takes place. So growth in the economy is when we see the gross state domestic product grow. So that is what the growth factor is. So today, say for example, if we have a large investment that comes into say the private sector in say power, so that will add to the GSDP of the state. Tomorrow we end up building up a large say state secretariat. Now that's expenditure from the government side. That adds to the government's expenditure and that adds to the GSDP. So tomorrow, next year, when we say we show an additional expenditure of 500 crores on that, that goes into the GSDP calculation, and tomorrow we will see the GSDP grow. So therefore, growth means basically economic growth, means basically expenditure, increase in consumption, government expenditure, private investments coming in, net exports, next import-export. So all these factors lead to the growth, and that's what it is. That's
What
what
about
we
the
do.
human resource development? I pointed out the health, education.
So you're talking about two different things. That's the reason why a lot of governments today talk about whether GDP or GSDP is actually the only way or the right way for any government to look at the overall performance of the economy in the government. So you're asking two different aspects. And I, for one, subscribe, in fact, to that particular thought process. And that's the reason why, if you look at the Vision 10 document that we have shown, why have we said that we want to go for a $10 billion economy? Now, $10 billion economy means we will double our economy in whatever 7, 8, 10 years which we have planned. But is that enough? Now, is it enough to just have that and yet not having the health sector and the education sector and the farmers and the women and the youth benefit from it? That's the reason why, if you had read my vision document, you would have realized that while we talk of Vision 10, we also talk of 10 opportunities, we talk of 10 commitments. What are these commitments? These commitments are that when we achieve the $10 billion economy, we will not forget that we have to also give back to society in terms of the health investment. So we have talked about how we will transform and work towards the health sector. So the $10 billion economy should happen, but while that happens, it should also help the education, it should help the youth, the women, the health sector, and those are the social aspects which you're talking about. And hence the Vision 10 document, thank you for asking this question, it's helping me to clarify. That is the whole idea of ensuring that we have a balanced growth. We have a growth that will ensure that every section of society is taken on board while we're moving forward, and that's how an economy should grow. This debate is a very large debate, in fact, at the global level also. And that's why, nations like Bhutan have come out with something that they call the Gross Happiness Index, because they feel that just GSDP or GDP is not a fair enough number to judge the overall happiness, growth, and social justice at the grassroots level. So it's a much larger debate, but I don't think we have time to go into all of that. But yes, a valid question, and that's what the scenario is. So GDP is one part, but the social justice in terms of ensuring that different sectors are helped is another aspect. And that is why our vision document focuses on all these aspects, not only on the $10 billion economy, but how to reach this $10 billion economy in terms of 10 opportunities that we have where we can focus on, and in terms of the 10 commitments that we have towards health, women, social welfare, education, so on and so forth.